Hello, gorgeous. Hello, and welcome to another video. My name is Heather, and as always, I'm reading with a vengeance, and I hope you are too. Massive love to all you OGs who keep coming back, and if you're new to my channel, very warm welcome to you. I hope everybody is doing very well. How is everybody's reading going? We are halfway through the month of August. I have been having an exceptional reading month, and that is to say, not necessarily has everything been 5 stars, no, but I've been having such a good time reading because this is the first time in a long time that I've been able to pick up books on a whim based on my mood, what I feel like reading. And I know that's what reading should be all the time, but because I like to follow the Women's Prize for Fiction, and this year I judged the Booktube Prize for the first time, I haven't been able to mood read for a very long time, probably since February, because the long list for the Women's Prize was announced in March, if memory serves. So it's been since February since I've been able to really kind of just pick up books willy-nilly to read for my enjoyment. And that's not to say that I don't enjoy the reading that I've been doing for those prizes. I have, but when you're kind of assigned books to read, for lack of a better way of putting it, and on top of that have kind of a deadline to read those books, it takes the enjoyment out of it a little bit, not too much. But this month, August, has been the first month that I've been able to just read by the seat of my pants, and I've been having such a good time. I hope all of you have been having as good a time as I have been. What else is going on this month? So it's my birthday month. So I think last year I did kind of a birthday / 500 subscriber Q&A, and I baked and answered your questions, and it was super fun for me. I don't know why I didn't really do anything for my birthday booktube wise. I don't know why. Why didn't I do something? Should I still do something? I don't know. But exciting news for me anyways is my mom is coming to visit. She is going to arrive 2 days before my birthday, spend about 10 days here, and I'm going to show her around Savannah. I haven't got to spend time with her since she came to visit us when we were still living in Connecticut last October, and that was only for a couple of days. So I'm really excited to spend some quality time with her, and I know she's watching right now. So hi, Mom. I can't wait to see you. Other than that, not much has been going on. I've just been working, enjoying the summer. I guess the best way anybody can enjoy the summer in the southeastern part of the United States, and that is to stay indoors. It is hot, balls hot. Outdoor time is just not recommended. Also, I have the winners of the giveaway that I did a couple of videos ago for the book sleeves that I have handmade. I will announce those winners at the end of the video. And then my last bit of admin is I am considering having a readathon in December. I won't say specifically what it is. It's going to be a readathon where we read books that we wouldn't, I guess, typically read in December. I know a lot of people like to read Christmas / holiday themed books around that time of the year, but I'm going to go in a different direction. Stay tuned for more details about that. If you're a booktuber watching this channel and you're interested in hosting this readathon with me, please send me a message or email or something letting me know that you're interested. I have a list of booktubers that I am going to reach out to, so you might be one of those. But if you want to hop on this train early, please feel free to reach out and let me know. Let's get to what we're here for. I'm here to talk to you about the books that I read in the first half of the month of August. Normally I talk to you about the books in the order that I read them, and I think I'm going to try something different. I might have tried it one time before, and then I just forgot about it, but I think it's a good way to do it, and that is I'm going to talk to you in the order in which I rank my enjoyment. So I'm going to start with the books that I liked the least and lead up to the books that I liked the most. So the first book I'm going to talk to you about, sadly, is Terrace Story by Hilary Leichter. This is an ARC that I got at work. I featured this book in, I believe, my video of books that I'm excited about to be published in August. And yes, I was very excited about it, but it didn't quite meet my expectations, unfortunately. It wasn't a terrible book. It just wasn't what I expected based on what was on the back of the book, which I think happens a lot. So the synopsis on the back and what I expected it to be was Annie, Edward, and their young daughter Rose live in a cramped apartment. One night, without warning, they find a beautiful terrace hidden in their closet. It wasn't there before, and it seems to only appear when their friend Stephanie visits. A city dweller's dream come true, but every extra bit of space has a hidden cost, and the terrace sets off a seismic chain of events, forever changing the shape of their tiny home and the shape of the world. That's what I thought this whole book was going to be about. But what it ends up being is there's basically 4 parts. I wouldn't say this is a collection of 4 short stories because it's all surrounding the same characters, just each part focuses on a different character of the same story. So if that makes sense. So that synopsis is just the first part of the book. And the second part of the book follows a character named Lydia, and you can tell that you're way into the future. And Lydia refers to a character named Rose, who is Lydia's mother, and you deduce that Lydia's mother, Rose, is the same Rose that was the toddler in the first story. The story follows Lydia. She's a woman who is obsessed with death. And then the third part follows Stephanie, and it's clear who Stephanie is because it is the same Stephanie that is the character in the first story, who is the character that terrace only appears in the apartment when she is around. So you're following Stephanie, and you follow her for most of her life, from when she was a child through her teenage years, and she has this ability to widen space. I thought it was interesting, but I didn't think it needed to be as long as it was. You know, it talks about the trouble she gets into because she's able to make spaces bigger, and she tells the wrong people, and then people end up taking advantage of her because they want her to use this gift that she has. The thing that I found interesting about that story is Stephanie's gift of being able to widen spaces is kind of I don't know if it's metaphor or allegory, but it's a way for her to explore the space that we put between ourselves and other people when we're dealing with grief. And so I thought that was interesting, but still it was a little bit too long. And then the fourth part takes place way, way in the future, where Rosie is working at a space station, and she is in charge of intake for residents in this new suburb they have up in space. And she is interviewing an unnamed woman, and you are left to deduce who that woman is, and I won't say who it is. I found that story, unfortunately, it was the shortest one, to be the most engaging. Probably because at this point you know who the characters are, you have a little bit of history of them. I think I would have enjoyed this book more if it was just more of that first story. This couple, they're newly married, they're new parents, they are in this cramped apartment, and all of a sudden their friend comes over and they have this magical terrace, and then strange things happen because of that terrace and because of this woman who comes into their lives. I think I would have appreciated that story more if it was expanded into a full-length novel, but that's just me. I liked the story. I liked the weirdness of it. It reminded me of that show Fringe. Did you guys ever watch Fringe? I loved that show so much. And that was basically about 2 parallel universes. And I think that's touched on a little bit. So I'm not recommending this book. I think there's a lot of you who will like this book. I don't think the writing style was for me. And again, it's another one of those examples of I was expecting more of what's on the back of the book. And since I didn't get that, I was led to disappointment. And I don't know, maybe I wouldn't have been as disappointed if I went into it not knowing it. It's less than 200 pages. You might like it. It was just okay for me. Next up is Factory Girls by Michelle Gallen. I picked this book up out of the donation box at work. It'll go back into the donation box now that I have finished with it. I think I featured this one in a book haul video that I did, and I was super excited to read it because this is a book that takes place in the early 1990s, and it takes place in Ireland during the tail end of the Troubles, and I think I expected this book to be more of what I hoped for in Louise Kennedy's Trespasses. What it turned out to be is something that I think if you like that show Dairy Girls, you'll enjoy this book. This is one of those books that I'm so glad I read the physical copy, because I think if I listened to it, I would have had the same problem I had with Douglas Stewart's Young Mungo, in that there was a lot of cultural slang in here. And so I ended up reading some words that I'd never seen before. I had to look up, which I don't mind doing that when I'm reading the physical copy, because when you hear it, it's kind of, you can't get the spelling of it or whatever. I was able to look up some words and learn some new Irish slang. I had a little bit of fun with that. So anyways, this takes place during one summer in 1994 in a northern Irish town. You're following Maeve and her girlfriends, Aoife and Caroline. But it's mostly Maeve. They've just completed their American equivalent of high school. They are waiting for their SAT scores to see where they're going to go to university. While they're waiting, they go to work for this local factory to get some extra money in case they end up getting the scores that will take them over to London, where Maeve really wants to go to become an investigative journalist. So that's really the core of the story, but you're also learning about what is going on at the tail end of the Troubles. There are Protestants and Catholics working side by side at this factory, and that's new to Maeve because all growing up have been kind of separate from Protestants. She herself and her family are Catholic. This book talks a lot about, I think, the generation gap as far as the effect the Troubles has had on people. In this story, you can really see the difference on how the older generations react to the violence that happens, the police action, whereas Maeve's generation kind of take it with a grain of salt because she's raised in it. It was happening all the time from the time she can remember. I don't think I learned any more in this book about the Troubles than I did in Trespasses, but that's okay. I really enjoyed most the dynamic of Maeve with her family, Maeve and her best friends. And again, there was a thing in the synopsis that I thought there was going to be more of in the book. Maeve realizes something is going on behind the scenes at the factory. So I thought it was going to delve more into that. And there is a thing that happens where, because Maeve wants to study journalism at university, she kind of takes it upon herself to dig deeper on what's going on at the factory. And she finds out, and that's great, but it was such a small, I think, part of the story. I don't know, I felt like this was going in too many directions because you have the Troubles, you have Maeve's experience with her supervisor, who is referred to as Handsy Andy. You have the shady goings on at the factory that Maeve is going to find out. You have this dynamic because all three girls come from different kind of socioeconomic areas. And so that comes out in their relationship, which I found was interesting. And then you just have this whole coming of age aspect with Maeve, who wants to leave her small town. She wants to go to London. She has these aspirations, but she also has this self-doubt that is so prevalent in young girls of her age. And anyways, you have all of this going on, and I feel like there was too much that was trying to be addressed in this book and didn't really have a solid landing on any of them. So I really wanted to love this. I didn't hate it. There was some humor in here. There were some touching moments. Ultimately, I cared enough about Maeve where, you know, she's a memorable character, but I just didn't love this as much as I wanted to. The author has a very readable writing style, but bottom line, glad I read it, didn't love it. The next book I read was an audiobook, and that was Tiny Beautiful Things by Cheryl Strayed. I didn't even know this one existed until I saw the preview for the Hulu series based on this book, but I read Cheryl Strayed's Wild, which I absolutely loved, and I loved the movie adaptation of it. So Cheryl Strayed used to be an advice columnist called Dear Sugar. This book is a compilation of those letters written to Dear Sugar and Dear Sugar's response. However, I think that's the format of this book, but really and truly, this is a memoir because so many of Sugar's responses to people seeking advice are based on her own life experiences. Some of the time I liked it, and some of the time I felt like, do we need to hear a life story to get an answer to this question? So at first I was a little annoyed. The first couple of letters and Sugar's response to them were kind of eye-rolling for me because her response was, you know, oh, I remember this one time when, or back when I was 20 years old, or once when I was in college. You know, it was always something that she brought up in her own life. And I guess that sometimes the best advice is based on life experience, but sometimes I felt like these long, drawn out essays on her own life just to come to this specific point to advise, I felt was a little bit of overkill, but that wasn't the whole book. The more I listened, the more I kind of appreciated her life experiences and how she drew on them to advise these people who needed help. And not all of them were long, drawn out answers and life stories or anything. There were some short and sweet answers, which I really appreciated. Sometimes they added levity, and sometimes they were just straight to the point and were just kind of palate cleansers to the longer ones. The thing that I liked the most about this book is that most of the advice she gave wasn't advice at all. It kind of makes me think of Pirates of the Caribbean. They are not really rules so much as guidelines. Strait's stories and essays and the way she gave advice, they were more ways to show the person who is asking for advice paths to their own truth. They were examples that helped them to ask themselves the important questions. And as I got towards the end of the book and kind of looked back at all the ways that she answered these questions, that's really what it was. I mean, except for the couple of people who asked advice that were just no-brainers, like, you know, my brother's beating the shit out of me. Should I invite him to Christmas dinner? Pretty easy answer to that. That was probably one of the most memorable stories. The way that Dear Sugar answered these questions were more not answering the questions, but perhaps directing them to better questions that they should be asking. As I mentioned, I listened to this as well, and I have to say it was so funny. As I'm listening to it, I'm like, I really don't like this narrator. And then at the end of it, I looked up who the narrator is. It's Cheryl Strayed. Sometimes the author isn't the best narrator. I don't know if it was her tone of voice or her inflection. It made it sound robotic. I don't know. A me thing. And really, I really wish that I had just read the physical copy so that I could read articles in intervals over time. I think that's how it was meant to be read, but I am glad I read it. It is insightful. If you want to know a lot more about Cheryl Strayed, I highly recommend this. Although I do have to say, after reading this, I don't know if I want to watch the series more or less now. The next book I read is another compilation of things, and that is Weird Things Customers Say in Bookshops by Jen Campbell. Now, you all may recognize the name Jen Campbell. She is a pretty popular booktuber as well. So if you watch her Booktube channel, you already know that she worked for, I believe, 10 years in a bookshop in the UK. And she wrote this book, and most of it are customers that actually said these things to her. But I think she did a vlog, and she had other booksellers write to her to tell her the weird things that customers said to them. And so this is a compilation of not just Jen Campbell's experience, but other booksellers around the world. And it's a cute little book. I enjoyed it. I laughed out loud at some things. All the ones that were Jen Campbell's contributions, I believe absolutely 100%. The ones that were sent to her, I think most of them, yes, I think they actually happened, but there were a couple where I'm like, did somebody really say that? Or was it something that you thought would be funny if a customer said to you in a bookshop? That's the only real, and I wouldn't even call that a criticism. People wrote to Campbell saying this actually happened. Campbell took them at their word, and I don't fault her for that at all. But there were a couple of excerpts that I thought were a little eye-rolling, but my eyes roll pretty easily, to be fair. But bottom line, I enjoyed this book. Like I said, most of the stuff in here I believe actually happens, especially now that I've worked in a bookshop for a few months, and some of the things that people ask and say, I should probably start writing stuff down. And actually, I already know there's a follow-up to this. There's a second book, I think, called More Weird Things. So Jen, are you writing book number 3? I might have some material for you. The next book I read, I just finished this morning, so it's still fresh in my mind, and that is Midnight is the Darkest Hour by Ashley Winstead. This is an ARC that I got from work. I feel so lucky to have gotten my hands on this. This doesn't come out until October. And FYI, this is my first Ashley Winstead. Where have I been? Why haven't I been reading more Ashley Winstead? I immediately have added The Last Housewife and In My Dreams I Hold a Knife to my TBR. I really enjoyed this book. So this is a contemporary mystery thriller. This follows Ruth, and she is a 23-year-old young woman living in a very small town called Bottom Springs in Louisiana. Ruth is the daughter of the town reverend, and not just the town reverend, but a reverend who is super powerful, kind of has a hold on the whole town, kind of fundamentalist, a little bit over the top. We are in the deep, deep South. We are in the Bible Belt, so religion is a very, very heavy influence on many of the people who live in the area. But Ruth is an only child. She's raised very sheltered. Her parents don't want her reading books that aren't the Bible. She just leads a very, very sheltered life because if it's not God's work, then it's not worth doing in the eyes of her parents. But Ruth is a very, very curious person. She goes to the library a lot. That's the one area that her father has not had any influence over. So she's able to get her hands on some books. She reads them secretly. This book opens up really with a skull that is found in the swamp. And they determined that the skull belongs to a very well-known local man who disappeared several years ago. But before that skull is identified, Ruth gets very nervous about this skull that was found because of something that happened that she was involved with 6 years earlier when she was 17 with her best friend Everett. So this whole book takes place from Ruth's perspective, but it is a multiple timeline, and it's mostly present day and then going back to 6 years before, with a couple of small exceptions. I think there's a chapter that goes back to when she was 11, there's a chapter that goes back when she's 14, and then there's a chapter that goes back when she was 19. And there are very specific events that happen at those points in her life. You learn about how she became friends with Everett, who happens to be kind of the bad boy. He was the bad boy in high school. He's kind of the bad boy of the town. Her parents hate him. Everett's father was the town drunk, always getting into trouble. But the bad thing that happened 6 years ago is what drew them together, and it's this shared secret that they have. And so the story goes from there. I don't want to reveal too much, obviously. This was a good time for me. I really enjoyed this from page one. I really like Ashley Winstead's writing style. It drew me in immediately. I loved the dual timeline. I loved the short chapters. I loved that it took place in the deep south of Louisiana. And I love that there was this mystery that slowly unfolds over time, and that there were these branches of other town secrets and secrets that certain characters have. They unfolded over the course of the book. That was super enjoyable. I like how she revealed the hypocrisy that can sometimes happen in organized religion. There were a couple of parts in this book that went in a couple of directions that I wasn't expecting. If I were to offer a criticism to this book, throughout the whole book there is like a sexual tension between Everett and Ruth. But there were a lot of descriptions of Everett's muscles and how they rippled under his shirt, and how sweat glistened off them, and how the rain flowed off of the muscles. Too much of that. I don't need to know about that. That's really a big reason why I don't read a whole lot of romance, because I really don't care how muscles ripple. In retrospect, I can see it wasn't a huge part of the book. I think it's just one of those things for me where I'm like, why am I reading this? But that would be the only criticism I really had. I loved the ending, and the ending might not be for everybody. I enjoyed this book. I had a really, really good time. I will be reading all her other stuff. Why am I just now reading Ashley Winstead? This next book that I read, and I use that term read loosely, and you'll know why in a second. I happened to read by accident, and it was because I shelved this book when I was working. It's called Bear, and it is by Stefan, I know I'm not going to say his last name correctly, Nosplius. Big apologies for that. He is a Swedish-born illustrator, which makes a whole lot of sense because this book is a picture book, and that's all it is. There's no written word. It's all illustrations. I was taken in by the cover. I was drawn in immediately. There's something about this cover that just pulls at my heartstrings. And so I started flipping through it, and each picture I looked at just drew me in more. Probably after 5 pages of flipping, I went to the beginning and started from the beginning, and then I realized there were no words. I mean, each page, each illustration tells a story, and it's beautiful. And basically, all I will tell you about this book is that it is a story of friendship. It is a story of the importance of asking for help when you're in trouble, whether it's physical trouble, emotional trouble, any kind of trouble. Ask for help. And it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody that you know. And just from this cover, as you can see, as an example of what I'm saying, a bear in trouble, you would think that a rabbit would be the last place they would be able to get solid help from. This book said so much with no words. It was so beautiful. It's heartbreaking, but it's heartwarming. And it talks about the most complex issues that we're all facing today in such a simplistic way. It's beautiful. Please just pick it up. I absolutely recommend this book. I love this picture book. I know I don't give book star ratings anymore, but all the stars for this one. And finally, the last book I read in the first half of the month was The Barnabus Project, another picture book. And look at this cover, you guys. How could I have not read this book? This was written and illustrated by the Fan brothers. Yes, that is an elephant in a bell jar. I could not read this book. As many of you know, elephants are like my favorite animals, and so this cover got my attention. There's this pet store that is known for selling the perfect pets. They are engineered to become perfect pets. But down deep below in the basement of the perfect pet store is a lab where the perfect pet failures live. And Barnabas is considered one of those failures. I think he was supposed to be fluffy and his eyes were supposed to be bigger or something like that, but he ends up being a fail, and he is kept in a lab in a bell jar along with all these other failed pets. And it talks about what it means to be other and how you're treated if you are not cute or not like all the others. And this story goes on to tell how Barnabas escapes and leads all the other perfect pet failures out of the lab into the world. And it's just adorable. I loved this little story. I loved the illustrations were beautiful. I loved the imaginativeness of the little failed pet creatures that were in the story. All of the stars. I'm not rating, I promise. Anyways, I hope you guys are lovers of picture books as I have recently become. Okay, so those were the books that I read in the first half of the month of August. Have you guys read any of these books? I hope you found something that piqued your interest. Have you read a favorite book this month? I would love to know. But before I sign off, let me announce the winners of the giveaway. Once again, thank you all for participating. I'm going to start with the Seahorse book sleeve. And the winner of this is Lupita Ochoa. And I know you've been a longtime watcher, so I'm really pleased that you won this. So congratulations, Lupita. The winner of the Circles book sleeve is Lindsay Reeds. Thank you so much, Lindsay, and congratulations. And the winner of the Flowers book sleeve is Lorraine Scanlon, another longtime watcher and supporter. So thank you so much and congratulations, Lorraine. My email address is down below. Please reach out to me and let me know your mailing address so that I can get your prize to you as soon as possible. Again, congratulations and thank you everybody for participating. So that is it for today. If you're still watching at this point, please consider giving that like button a boop, and a subscribe would be wonderful. Let me know what you're reading right now, and if you're loving it, I would love to know, or you can just say hi down in the doobly-doo. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.